Hello, everybody. I was looking at our syllabus or study book, whatever we want to call it, and speculating about how much you have been able to discern through all the things that I've been saying, the way that I have been following it. Because I try not to say exactly the same things that are in this book, in part because I find it too tiresome for me. I always try not to repeat myself too much. And in part because I want you to read it and not have to be sort of checking back and forth between what I say and what I say when I write it down in here. And yet, on the other hand, I have been talking to you, see, about what's called the second week. Man is the consumer and creator of art. And I tried to point out to you how completely he is this, and how all through the ages and at all kinds of places and all kinds of periods and time and in space, that man has been making works of art. And that this goes on right down to the present day, right down to the present moment. This is one of the things which man cannot perhaps even avoid doing. It's something which he must do. Now, that doesn't mean that it has to be awfully good. It doesn't mean that it's great art. It doesn't mean that it is all equally valuable. But I think that it is all art. And the only way, I believe, that you can define art is something which would enable us to call this art which man makes, those things which man makes, in which he embodies his dreams or his ideals or his faith or beliefs. Now, I also want to talk to you about, in the what's called the third week of our talks, about the nature of art as paradoxical. And that is something which is maybe a little bit difficult to talk about, because the paradox is always very, very hard to speak about at all. And the nature of language is such that the very word paradox, of that argument or idea that is self-contradictory, is disagreeable to language. Language doesn't like it. We don't like to try to convey in language a paradoxical statement. And yet I believe that art is a paradox. I think it's such a beautiful word. Looks always like archaic Greek things to me, just as a word. It has such a stiff, blunt look to it. But it has this meaning, I believe. The meaning of art is inherently contradictory, as it is both like life and unlike life. And this is the inherent paradox of the nature of art. Now, if I want to write that art is like life, and is very like it, and yet is unlike it, and is very unlike it, you see right away in trying to write it, to make a sentence, if I say art is like life, you don't have to read that, but unlike it. Right away, by the very nature of the sentence, you see, you get a certain order in which it looks as though art is like life is more important than the fact that it's unlike life. And if you write it the other way, art is unlike life, but it is like life, then you get something equally ordered in a way that gives importance. Now, because I feel this is that this kind of a sentence makes it difficult for you to see, I have devised a way of writing it that always puzzles people, but which I think is the only way you can write it, which is in a circle, so that you have no beginning and no end. And of course it's very difficult to do this. Art is like life. Oh my, it's hard. Can you read that at all? But art is unlike life. Now, the reason I put it in that circle is so you don't have any place where you begin, you don't have any place where you end. Both of the ideas have to be right, in a way, in front of you at once, and not in order. Now, what I'm trying to do is to convey to you that the nature of art is not like the nature of a sentence. It's not like the nature of language, in other words. It's its own private kind of nature that defies, in many ways, language, and defies the sentences that we may make up about it. And if you can understand that it has to be both of these things, and both of them at once, maybe you'll understand something about the kind of changes that we have in art that we were talking about last time. As this visual revolution that we're all part of in the 20th century and that makes something from the 19th century, something furthermore which was famous and recognized or at least thought of very highly in the 19th century, in a way no longer applicable. Here you have something which is very much like life, but like life as it was then. We looked at this last time, and I only wish that you could be standing here in the room with me and look at it, because I know that when you see it on your screens, it loses some of the character that it has because of the very way that you see it through the screen. That is, the way that you see it by the medium that you see it in. Now, if you stood here in front of it, you would think, as everyone who's come in the studio has thought, and they first look at it, this is an old photograph. Not just that it's a photograph, you see, but it's an old photograph. A photograph made at about that time. Actually, it is a painting. And it is a painting which was intending to be as much like life as it could possibly be. In other words, it took one side of the paradoxical nature of art and emphasized that as much as it possibly could. And I mean, I believe with all of the dedication in the world that this man held as his ideal only that art should be like life. I think I'm safe in saying that this, to him, was the exact nature and the ultimate nature and the total nature of art. And that this is what it should be. And yet what happens? Here with all of the skill that anyone could possibly need at his command, he has made this scene, which to him certainly looked exactly like life. To us already looks less than like life. Do you see? It already takes on this curious sense of being old and distant, and takes on something which is, well, it's what? It's like artificiality, like non-life. Though with every skill that he had, he aimed at making it like life, thinking this was all. This was the only thing that he could possibly need or want. And the irony is that he could do this. He could do this very well. He could do this so well that we don't even know his name now. I know his name because I can read it off of here for you. And it was Danton, D-A-N-T-A-N. And it is a name that is, I think you could not even find in any history of art. Because though he has perfectly achieved this thing which he intended to achieve, it has made no kind of an impress on anyone. Because I believe that everyone recognizes that art must be something else besides lifelike. And if your aim is to make it exactly like life, you really, in the first place, will never succeed. Never. And in the second place, perhaps the more you succeed, the more boring it is to other people. The more that they don't care to read about it, or to read it, or to see it, or to hear it, or to have anything to do with it. And in a way, this proves this. I think that when you get something like this, for instance, which is also painted at the same time and was also recognized as a great painting at the time that it was made, and this is by a man, again, totally unknown, named Bashkentov, but it's from the Paris exhibition of that time. Here you have something that is a little bit more selective. You see, our other friend was deliberately trying to look as though he had chosen nothing. That is, to look as though he were presenting simply a slice of life, as a candid camera would do. That is, he is marking off so that you see only half of the head, you see only half of what's over here, as though it were a random shot by a camera of this world, with everybody completely unconscious of what's going on. Whereas in this one, you immediately feel that he is trying, well, what is he doing? He's trying to tell a story. And it is, in this way, strangely, not quite as remote, and also, I think, not quite as if it were as much like a photograph as the other one. As we are conscious, we become conscious of there being a mind active in here, not just a camera. Not that a camera is ever, I suppose, ever entirely without the help and attention of a person, but we are conscious of this as the working of a person's mind. And the other side of art, the side of art which is is called style. It's called sometimes falsely, the imagination. It's called all of the things that belong to the other half of the paradox. That is the part of the paradox which demands that art should not be exactly like life. That it should have some way to a veil between it and life. And all works of art demand this. That part is a little bit dealt with here, as it was less in the other one. Now always, no matter how much and how extravagantly a person may desire to make his work exactly like life, he cannot do it. And his life is always going to elude it. And even if you can imagine our children sleeping in their marble chair, if you can imagine them painted to look like life, it would still not really be life. And if you think of something that is made as much like life as possible, the more it becomes like that, the less you are apt, anyone in the world, the less apt they are to think that it is a work of art or to be concerned with it as a work of art. Now, you demand that it should be like it. And not only you, but I believe everybody who has ever lived, everybody who has ever made a work of art, bought one, treasured one, cared for one, has demanded that it be like life. But they have also demanded that it be not like life. And it's on this paradox that art always hinges. I'll see you next time.